So these four Brahma Viharas are a teaching that actually predates Buddhism by manifesting these states of minds or intentions. It was said that one could dwell with Brahma, which is why the name. But the teaching also shows up in the words of the Buddha and the Pali Canon as the practice or intention that truly creates a state of heaven on earth. And the part of the early Buddhist scriptures, the Pali Canon known as the Digha Nikaya, the long discourses of the Buddha, we find this passage. A monk suffuses the world in the four directions with a mind of benevolence. Then above and below and all around the whole world from all sides, completely with a benevolent, all embracing, great, boundless, peaceful, and friendly mind, just as a powerful conch blower makes himself heard with no great effort in all four directions, so too is there no limit to the unfolding of this heart liberating benevolence. This is the way to the communion with Brahma. So these four immeasurables are metta or loving kindness, karuna or compassion, mudita or empathic joy or appreciation, and upekkha or equanimity. And in the Theravadan or early Buddhist tradition, these are practiced in the same way we practice counting, following the breath, or shikantaza during zazen. And I think many Zen centers these days embrace metta practice as well as emphasizing compassion, empathic joy, and appreciation, and equanimity. And of course, these qualities are parts of many Buddhist lists, and they certainly overlap with the second rung of the Eightfold Path, right intention, which consists of loving kindness, which is metta, and then renunciation or letting go, which is related to equanimity, and then non-harming, which is related to compassion. And in my experience, practicing these four powerful is very powerful and creates openness and spaciousness in our mind and body that really helps with all aspects of our practice. So it helps us settle into zazen and concentrate better. It helps us more carefully and fully practice the precepts and reflects the basic wisdom of non-separation. And it helps us manifest our practice in the world and helps us as bodhisattvas serve all beings where they are. So I'll just say a few things about each of these four, and then I'm really looking forward to hearing what you all have to say about these. So, metta is usually translated as loving kindness, a practice of intentionally generating loving kindness toward all beings, all creatures, all things, regardless of how we feel about them. This is not romantic love or love conditioned on how the person responds or what outcome is desired. Metta is freely extended to everyone, which is actually harder than it sounds. And we generate metta from this heart center, from this center of our chest. We can use words like, may you be peaceful, may you be happy, may you be free, or some kind of similar words. The point actually is not so much the words as generating that kind intention. So I've found that simple statements are usually better than complex ones. And we often start with people who are easier to generate loving feelings toward. So we may start with ourselves, with someone we really love, with someone neutral, with someone we have difficulty with, kind of in that order. And I found that when I teach this to children, they almost 100% choose an animal as the person that they love. so, um, and I've also often encouraged people, people prefer to send metta to themselves last, because often that's actually the hardest. We'll talk about that a little later. But an important part of metta practice is this non-separation. As the pioneering nun Aya Kema says, not dividing people into those we love and those we don't love. And it doesn't mean that we feel the same about everyone. Just that our intention is to meet everyone with loving regard. It's an intention. One of the children in one of our children's classes based on the Eightfold Path said he was surprised to find that he could still send loving kindness meditation to someone he didn't like. And he was 8 at the time. So yet he was able to get it, not trying to pretend we feel something or denying what we feel, but instead, right in the midst of whatever we're feeling, generating or intending to generate feelings of loving kindness towards someone. Very powerful. And I found generating loving kindness or practicing metta toward neutral people is also very powerful. Each person, animal, plant, thing is worthy of our loving kindness, of our metta. And a wonderful way to go through the day is with the intention of practicing metta toward whomever we see, whoever pops up in front of us. Another aspect that's very important is not having an expectation of something in return. Not expecting results, either for yourself or the person to whom you're sending metta. We just do it. We just put it out there. One of my students was saying to me at one point that it was tricky. She wasn't sure what to wish for her friend. And I replied, we don't have to try to figure out what's best for someone. We just send the metta with no strings attached. This practice can be especially helpful when we are persisting in not liking someone. And I'm sorry for my family in the background. I'm actually at my daughter and son-in-law's house. Actually, though, what this practice does for us is open up a spaciousness in which we can see what's really going on when we harbor animosity towards someone. That person, more often than not, is a mirror reflecting our shadow back to us. If we just notice someone's mistakes or faults, it can be very straightforward. We may choose to make a suggestion, we may not, but there's not a passion in it. However, if this quality or fault in a person is something we're stuck on or get grabbed by, it's most likely a reflection of something in ourselves that we don't like. If we understand this, then practicing as a Sangha can be very helpful and show us our rough spots, especially residential practice. And kudos to you all. We don't have residential practice here, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. But otherwise, we just assess blame and scorn on the other person because we're not wanting to own the part of us that person reminds us of, right? So we can practice metta during zazen, or at any time we could practice metta as our sole practice during zazen, even for a whole retreat. Or we could choose just to practice metta for a few minutes of every sitting, or any other arrangement that works for us. So many possibilities. So let's talk about karuna, or compassion, which we talk about a great deal in Buddhism. What does it really mean? Some definitions that I've heard: concern for the well-being of others. The wisdom side of anger is compassion, the capacity to be open to the reality of suffering and to aspire to healing. That from Sylvia Boorstein. Dalai Lama said, if you want to know what compassion is, look into the eyes of a mother or father as they cradle their sick and fevered child. I think we can all relate to that. And compassion as a word literally means to suffer with. And an example of compassion, or an explanation about compassion I'm fond of, is from the Blue Cliff Record, case 89. And of course, Guanyin, or Kannon, is the Bodhisattva, or human embodiment of compassion. It is said that because she constantly turns to hear the sounds of the suffering of the world, she was given 11 heads and 1,000 arms to help everyone. I can certainly relate to this. It feels to me that everywhere I turn, everything is urgent. Everything is a crisis. Everything seems to need attention. And it does. So anyway, the koan, part of the koan goes, Yunyan asked Dawu, how does the Bodhisattva Guanyin use those many hands and eyes? Dawu answered, it is like someone in the middle of the night reaching behind her head for a pillow. What I appreciate here is that there's no person helping another person. When I reach for a pillow, I don't realize it's a pillow, or that I'm reaching, or even that I'm here. I'm just reaching to make my head more comfortable. Oh, and adjust until it feels right. No separation. So when we have compassion for another, we carry the suffering with them. We can't take it away or really know how it feels from their vantage point. We simply walk beside them, sharing some of the load in whatever way feels appropriate to them. And I find that the more I can see the suffering in myself and be with that, the more I can genuinely be with others who are suffering. Being with my experience of a lack of regard, for example, being unseen, patronized, disregarded by another person, if I can really sit with that, this helps me to be compassionate toward a person when they are experiencing that, such as a person of color. On the other hand, when we do make ourselves separate from someone we're helping or being kind or comforting to, then it seems to me compassion can become tinged with something else. For example, pity, feeling sorry for someone, which basically says, you're not okay the way you are, you need to be different, which feels like judging, not affirming. Or it could be tinged with paternalism. Oh, you're not okay. You need to be taken care of, and I know what you need. You don't need to worry about it. So there's arrogance and othering and separation in that. It doesn't feel good. I think compassion at its core is very humble. We open ourselves not knowing how another person is feeling. We listen and learn and let that other person use our spaciousness for their comfort and benefit, rather than trying to fix them or give them advice. When I've needed compassion, I've wanted someone to just hear me, to get how I'm feeling, and just grunt some kind of acknowledgement, not tell me how to fix myself. In racial justice work, there is the term white saviorism, the idea that Black people need white people to save them. Again, an attitude of superiority and othering. It feels really more like another form of oppression, not an affirmation. Liz Avignon, a young Black woman from upstate New York, decided to start a grocery store in the Austin neighborhood of Chicago. Austin neighborhood being a largely Black and underserved community, after she found herself unable to find ATMs, grocery stores, basic services, even in the main thoroughfare in Austin. She named the store 40 Acres. And I love what she said in a recent interview. She said, I didn't see a neighborhood that needed saving or people that needed me to rescue them. I saw people that were underserved in their market and who are customers to be valued. So I didn't see a neighborhood that needed saving or people that needed me to rescue them. I saw people that were underserved in their market and who are customers to be valued. Appreciate those words. And finally, a word about self-compassion. Kristen Neff, a mindfulness teacher who's written a lot on this subject, makes a distinction between self-esteem and self-compassion. Self-esteem has to do with respecting and loving yourself because of your positive traits and successes. So it is conditional. Self-compassion is about being there for yourself unconditionally, no matter what. Self-esteem involves judgment, self-compassion does not. Self-compassion is often more difficult than compassion toward others. It is fundamental and valuable, though, because sometimes in life, we receive so many messages about our lack of value and internalize that to such an extent that we can't generate any self-esteem. I'm recalling a young woman at Lincoln Hills Copper Lake, which is a juvenile detention facility in northern Wisconsin, where some of us were teaching a mindfulness course. In an activity we were doing, she was asked to think of 4 positive things about herself, and she could not think of a single one, despite some of her colleagues giving her suggestions. She's like, no. It was really heartbreaking. But she had so internalized this idea of her own lack of value, worthlessness, that she was one of the bad ones, beyond redemption. But self-compassion says, I am more than the worst thing I've ever done. No matter what, I'm valuable and deserving of love. Mudita, or empathic joy, is sometimes called sympathetic joy or appreciation, is probably one of the least mentioned of these 4. Being able to rejoice in others' accomplishments genuinely. And this is hard if we believe we're in a zero-sum game where one person has to lose in order for someone else to win. That if you receive honors and praises, it means my accomplishment is diminished somehow. And honestly, a lot of our society our way of looking at the world is set up this way. I find that when I am focused on myself in a narrow, self-centered way, then others are seen as competitors. When I identify more with my community or team, on the other hand, I want to celebrate everyone's accomplishments because we're all on the same team. They're our accomplishments. Together we rise is so true. And an extension of this is that we're all interdependent on one another. We need each other's successes for our own lives to be supported. We may think we can leave others behind in our quest for personal fulfillment, but we actually can't. The pandemic has made this abundantly clear, hasn't it? We thought we could ignore the struggles of essential workers, the people who grow our food, take care of our children, clean our homes and buildings. But in fact, we can't. If they don't have what they need to thrive, we don't thrive either. And Zen centers are by no means immune to this issue of competition. Students may compete to see who gets through koan study first, who gets what position, who seems to garner the teacher's attention, and so much more. In the days when I was at UCLA, it was simply awful in that regard, I must say. And of course, this was, in the 70s, way before Eigyoku and so forth. Those folks became in charge of the Zen Center. I like the fact that Sylvia Boorstein uses the word appreciation for empathic joy. I had not seen that before, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Appreciation is a way of seeing, acknowledging, and being aware of the accomplishments and talents of others. We can't take joy in it if we don't even see it. So, as in the discussion on metta and compassion, separating myself, seeing myself as separate is what makes empathic joy hard. And on the other hand, recognizing our independence and acknowledging what is done for us with appreciation and gratitude allows us to feel joy in others' accomplishments. So now for the last topic, equanimity. In my earlier days of practice, equanimity was presented to me as being unmoved by what was happening around me, by having a stiff, unsmiling demeanor or a continuous Zen laugh that was never interrupted by sadness, fear, regret, or any other range of normal human emotions. Or the famous, is that so story, no matter what happened, what was said, just an unruffled, is that so? And there were people who seemed to embody this. Operant word, seemed. Honestly, I never found any of this very appealing and never aspired to these states of being, as you may hear from my tone of voice. So I tended to put equanimity on the back burner somewhere as something I didn't have a lot of appeal for me. But these days, equanimity has a little different appreciation. Equanimity, says Sylvia Boorstein, is the capacity of the mind to hold a clear view of whatever is happening both externally and internally, as well as the ability of the mind to accommodate passion without losing its balance. So equanimity is not indifference, apathy, or neglect, or being closed off from the world, but the opposite. Being able to fully embrace and hold space for whatever arises, staying present for all of it. Unconditional acceptance, but this does not mean inaction. When we bear witness to what is present, action may arise, such as running out of a building when we smell smoke, or starting CPR when we don't feel a pulse. When we're spacious and open, and this is the capacity we can develop as we practice, we can carry the suffering of others along with them without losing our own balance. We can be of true help to others and to ourselves, for that matter. So in summary, we talked about loving kindness or metta, generating kind regard for everyone we encounter. We talked about karuna, or compassion, carrying someone's pain alongside with them with humility, the difference between self-esteem and self-compassion. We talked about mudita, empathetic joy, being able to take joy in others' accomplishments. We talked about upekkha, or equanimity, as a capacity for holding clarity and passion without losing balance, not as indifference or apathy.